reconciling the district map that was crafted in 2012 with the change in population district by district that the census reports. We all well know, of course, there are issues that everybody has for some reason or another with the census, but it is the official record that we use to craft new districts in compliance with the U.S. Constitution, and failure to draw new maps in compliance with one person, one vote standard, creating roughly equal populations in each one of the districts would itself result in a pretty significant lawsuit that is grounded in the 14th Amendment. That's usually an easy case, of course, to deal with. You don't want to find yourself on the receiving end of that claim. So related to that point, I think there was a question about why not wait until 2025. Again, part of it was, again, to be consistent with the law and avoid the lawsuit that comes with anybody challenging the failure by the city to adopt new districts. But of course, in addition to that, there's the consideration of the administrative process that needs to be managed. Actually, some comments came up during the section involving things that the council doesn't really manage, which is the allocation of boxes and precincts. Those are things that follow once redistricting is completed. You want to give the people who are charged with that task the time to make sure that everything's in place, so that when there is an election, and we know there's one scheduled for 2025, there may be a vacancy either on the board or on the council, that gives this administrative state time to put all the pieces into place in time for an election that's predictable and doesn't create confusion and problems for voters. And then, just as an aside, I think the other point that came up, and I hope that was one that will resonate with many of you all, aside from the election itself, is the governance question. You want to make sure that people, in reaching their elected representative, whether it's the council or board of education member, is roughly putting the same amount of pressure that everybody else in Birmingham can put on their counselor. So if you have heavily proportional or unequal districts, having a really heavily populated district is going to be a harder process for the average member of the public to get in touch with their elected member than in a very underpopulated or smaller populated district. So we want to equalize districts also for the purpose of assuring that governance happens in a predictable way. And so doing that sooner rather than later is actually a good thing. And then finally, I think there was the question about, again, different people at different points raising questions about the effects of a district map on their particular neighborhood. Some of that really goes to, I think, just the hard challenge of dealing with citywide mapping. Any change in any district, of course, affects everybody else, and we have to do that in a way consistent with the guidelines that balances as many of these considerations as possible. I, have certainly taken note of some of the neighborhood issues that have come up, but I think resolving them, at least the ones that we heard in this session, would require essentially a radical shift in the way that the map is drawn that would actually undermine some of the governance principles that we talked about earlier. Maintaining people who were chosen to be counselors or board of education members. That would blowing up the map means moving people out of their pre-existing districts and upsetting the voters' choices that were made in November 2021. So that's a general summary of the feedback that was presented. As I assess it, I don't see any radical shift that becomes necessary if it's the councilors will continue with the general thrust of the mapping configurations that are contained in your draft. But of course, that's your choice to make. But I would say, based on what we've seen so far, I think the general sense is that people understand the guidelines and that the mapping configuration, largely follows those guidelines. So I wouldn't recommend, based on what I've heard, any radical shifts. But again, that's subject to your discretion.
Thank you very much, Dr. Creighton. Counselors, just for your benefit, you can have a synopsis of and I think there are 3 pages of those. And the synopsis or the summary of those questions, we thank you, Dr. Creighton, for sort of categorizing those into those 3 groups of what mainly they pertain to or how they were relative to our redistricting process. Counselors, are there any questions you have regarding the summary or what Dr. Creighton has just explained to us as far as how those questions pertain to us? Okay. No, it's like an echo. As far as presentation of redistricting changes, I do want to remind you, counselors, that some of what our charge or our goals were from the February 14th meeting was one that we would, again, utilize the comments of the public, as well as we had conversations between counselors. I believe you had 2 one-on-ones with the consultant, as was brought out in the public hearing. We do have for you a summary, the takeaway from conversations with the counselors. We did take away 13 considerations or proposed changes that were generated through those conversations with counselors individually, with the consultant, as well as among yourselves. At this point, we resolved 10 of those 13 have been resolved by conversation between the counselors and the consultant. I do want to ask, or just let you know, there were some outstanding. 3 of those continue to be outstanding. I do know that in one set of the proposed changes, there was discussion between districts 3, 4, and 5 that affected, I believe, about 3,000 residents. And I do know that in our last meeting, or one of our past council meetings, I believe Councilors Abbott and Councilor O'Quinn, you did address or state that you had some agreement with that particular item as opposed to 3, 4, and 5. And I didn't know if you just wanted to sort of let your residents know what those proposed changes were and what the agreement was.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. So the changes impacted Forest Park, South Avondale, where the current district boundaries roughly approximate the South Avondale, historic South Avondale portion of the Forest Park, South Avondale neighborhood. The proposed redistricting, the agreement that we came to is that the lines would somewhat remain the same. There would be some changes there, but that neighborhood, Forest Park, South Avondale, would continue to be split between 3 and 5. The same pertains to East Avondale. The neighborhood is currently split between 3 and 5. We heard specifically from the residents that they enjoy that arrangement, and so we, have asked it or have agreed to continue that. And then the third change would be in the proposed Northeast Lake neighborhood, where what was proposed in Northeast Lake to come into District 5 would remain in District 4. And Councilor Moore and I have agreed to that. And then I guess the only other proposed change was related to North Avondale, Tom Brown Village, and the Hayes K-8. And Councilor Moore and I agreed that that would remain as proposed, with Tom Brown and Hayes coming into District 5.
Thank you very much. Dr. Creighton, I know that you've had conversation with those counselors, and I just wanted to find out how this would impact the draft that we have before us, or again, I believe I understood this affected like maybe 3,000 residents. Can you just give more guidance on what that change would bring about from a mapping standpoint?
Yes, Madam President, and with your permission, I'll share the map that I think nicely illustrates what Councilor Quinn has described and add some more comments, if that's all right.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Let's see if I do this right. You should soon be seeing a map.
We see a map.
Awesome. Okay, so what you're seeing now, I'm starting from the point of the mapping proposal that the councilors, all of you all, advanced on February 14th. The red outlines are the lines that represent the neighborhoods. I'm going to zoom in just a bit, just so that you can get a handle on where we're looking. This is where my cursor hopefully is circling. As you can see it, it's District 1, and going south from there is District 4 in green, etc. So I'm going to now show you a visual representation of the proposal that Councilor Quinn just described. So just briefly, since he, I think, quite nicely described it, District 4 here, see if I get this right, I'll do that and this. So District 4 in green would now take the remainder of Northeast Lake beyond what was in the proposal. So this area here around Village Creek, where my cursor is circling, is one of the affected areas. I'm going to go here to District 3 and 5. Initially, the proposal had, again, pursued the guideline about consolidating neighborhoods. This area here, the East Avondale area, was combined in District 5. The proposal that Councilor Quinn has offered,
And we're having just a, there we go.
3, 4, and 5 for the moment, right, divides East Avondale so that the southern part of it goes into District 3, and similarly in Forest Park, forgive me. Forest Park here is now divided so that the northern portion of that goes into District 5. I'm going to talk a bit about the population effects, because I think you rightly pointed it out, Councilor or President Alexander. District 5 in this exchange would shift 4,475 people to District 3. Actually, I'm sorry, District 3 and District 4 overall. District, specifically in this area here, 3,631 people are represented in what I've called the boot in East Avondale. And District 3 in exchange, in this exchange, is moving to District 5, 1,182 people in that South Avondale area, where the Forest Park, the northern part of Forest Park goes into District 5 from District 3. The net result of this is District 3 will have 551 fewer people than the original proposal of February 14th. District 4 will gain 475 people. That's up in Northeast Lake, as you remember. And District 5 will gain 76 people. Overall, what does this mean? Well, one piece of it is these two neighborhoods, East Avondale, Forest Park, are now divided as compared to the proposal. That is offset by East